Hey, want to make an awesome scouting app in just 30 minutes? Keep watching to find out how.
Hey there. Before we begin making this app, I just wanted to put a little disclaimer out that I won't spend much time explaining how many of the functions work and the design of the system. This is mainly just to show how simple making a system with real-life data is. If you want to learn more about the specific functions and how they work, we will release tutorial videos later that detail how specific functions work.
Hey everyone, I'm Akash Mighty, and I'm one of the lead scouters for FRC Team 2468 and an intern at Real Life Data. Today, I'm going to walk you guys through creating a scouting app in 30 minutes. In this tutorial, we'll be creating a dynamic, competition-ready scouting system, including a scouting form that allows scouters to gather data with ease while making fewer mistakes, data analysis tools to gather insights into your data, and finally, graphs and tables that make it easy to see and use your data. All right, let's do this.
To start, visit the Real Life Data website at reallifedata.net and click on the Author tab at the top of the screen. From there, create an account with the options below. Once the account is created, select the free option and agree to the terms and conditions, then click sign up. However, since this account is already made, you don't need to do that. Once your account is created, create a new project by clicking the plus add sign and name your project. Once your project is created, you can head over to the project properties and change the name, description, and image of the project. Real-life data projects are also collaborative and easy to share with others. All you have to do is head over to user access, click add user, and enter the email address for the user using the plus add user button. On the right, there are 3 checkboxes which highlight the permissions of the user you shared to. If the user needs to fill out the form, select Input. If the user wants to view the graphs, tables, and dashboards as well, select View. If one of the shared users wants to access the project, all they have to do is log in with the email address that it was used to share the project on input.reallifedata.net or view.reallifedata.net. Then they can click on Shared with Me, or in this case, it'll be Input Forms, and they can access whatever forms or visualizations that you create. With all of that out of the way, let's begin making the quantitative app. To begin, head over to the input forms and click Add Input Form. Name the input form whatever you want and continue to the editor. When creating a form, select the layout that most corresponds to how your scouter will be filling it out. In this case, we'll be using the phone, so let's choose the phone layout. Our scouting app will be based on the 2022-23 competition Charged Up, and it will be separated into 3 main groups: the Setup tab, the Auto tab, and the Tell You Up tab. Head over to the Layout section and feel free to change the background of the app to any color you want. In this case, we'll do black. From there, go to the Grouping section and drag a new group out onto the screen, which we will call the Setup group. To do this, head to Group Settings and name the group Setup Group. Next, change your color to the desired value, and then we can start dragging the elements onto the group. You can do this by going into Lines and Fill, and then just changing the hex code to whatever you want. We'll start by putting team number and match number, which we can do by going into Miscellaneous Shapes and adding 2 text blocks. Furthermore, we can go into Type Input fields and put 2 number input fields. Name each of the number input fields with the corresponding thing that they're trying to collect. In this case, we'll name this one team number, and we'll name this one match number. We'll also change the text up here using the words and labels by changing this to team number and match. We can also change the color of the text by going in the font settings and changing this. We can also change the color of this blue by going into Lines and Fill and again just dragging it over. Once this is done, we're going to move on to the preload section, which we can start by adding a text block here and naming it preload and changing the color to white. Now for this section, you can either do buttons or images. In my case, I'm going to do images, so we'll go over to images and drag an image onto the field. What I'll do next is I'll add a button on top of it, which will be one of these if you go into buttons. And I'll just make it so that it fits over and has a fill. You can change the fill through Lines and Fill and remove the line. And we'll change the color to purple. To make it look nice when clicked, we'll add another group, name it Cube Preload. and toggle it whenever the button is clicked. To do this, go into button extra actions and click pop up group 1, and we'll name this group cube preload, and we'll make it hide initially. Now to make it look nice when clicked, we'll add another button and we'll scale it to fit on top of this purple button. Once that is done, we'll make the group smaller so that it'll fit on the screen, and then we'll change the transparency of the group. To do this, we can head into fill and remove the fill from the group. And last but not least, we can go to this button and change its extra actions to hide the cube preload. So when we go into preview, which will preview the app, when we click it, it will show that it's selected, and when we click it again, it'll show that it is not selected. After repeating this process a few times, the preload section is done. To see what it looks like, head over to the preview section, and then you can see that when a button is clicked, it highlights green, and when it's clicked again, it does not highlight green. After this, we'll set up the Alliance color switch and starting position selector. To start, we'll select 2 text blocks that will tell us Alliance color and starting position. And after this is done, we'll start by creating a radio output, and we'll create a switch output. To customize a switch, select the switch and head over to field configuration, and we'll name this Alliance color. And then we'll go down to choices and change this to blue and red. And we'll also change the text color to white. After this, we'll modify the radio, which will go by going to font settings, changing the font first, and then we'll change the options by going into load, center, and wall, which were the 3 starting positions for the competition. And we'll also change this to no default so that the user has to select one. After this, we'll create the next button, which will begin the auto phase and pop up the auto group. Then to make it pop up the auto group, we first have to create the auto group. So we'll drag out a new group and we'll name it auto group. Next, we'll head back to the button extra actions and we'll make it pop up the auto group. Head back over to the auto tab. We'll begin by setting a scoring system with the scoring button, which will pop up the scoring options. Start by setting up the group by using the lines and fills section and naming the group to auto group. After this is done, drag on the button and label it scoring, and then change the lines and fill. Now drag on another group. This will act as our auto scoring group. And we'll make this a subgroup of this by shift clicking the group onto the other group. Now, as you can see, they are part of one another. Then we'll remove the fill and scoot it up a bit. And then we'll drag on 6 buttons, but for now I'm just going to do just one. And we'll add on an X button so that the user can X out of the group without having to click any of the buttons. And we'll go into button extra actions and make it hide the group. And we're going to do several things to this button. First, we're going to name it. In this case, this will be our high cone. And we'll make it take up about a half of the screen right here. And we'll change the color. And then for calculation purposes, we'll go up to field configuration and change the name. In this case, it will be auto cone high. And we'll just click enter. And then once the user clicks this button, we're supposed to hide the group so that the user knows that they clicked it. So we'll set the button extra actions to hide the high cone in the scoring group. And we'll repeat this for the rest of the groups. Once this is done, we'll double check that everything works by clicking on the scoring button and making sure that it pops up the scoring group. And then we'll head over to preview and we'll check that whenever we click each of these, it closes, and we can click this and it'll reopen. And if we click this X, it'll close. Next, we'll add the movement options in auto. So we'll start by doing docking and gauging, and we'll go into the choices and we'll select a radio button. And we'll change the 4 choices to dock, engage, and we'll switch it to no default so that the user has to choose. And then we'll add another switch that will determine whether or not they leave the community, and we'll go into add text, and we'll just ask if they leave community. And then for your choices, you can just put yes or no. And then just to double check, we'll go back into these switches and we'll name them auto engage. And we'll name this one auto community. And then before this group is over, we'll add a previous button and a next button so that the user can move on to the teleop or go back to the setup tab. To do this, we'll just set the label on this to previous and make it format. And then we'll change it so that it pops up setup group. And then we'll add a button for next, which will do the same thing. And then we'll make it pop up the teleop group. But first you have to create the teleop group. So we'll just drag on a group and we'll name it teleop group. And we'll format this later, but for now, we'll just go back into the button extra actions and make it pop up the teleop group. After that is done, open up the teleop group and we'll begin by fixing the aesthetics and sizing of the group. After that, we'll create a pickup group, which will show what object the robot picks up. To do this, create a new group called pickup group, which we'll just drag on here and we'll change the name to pickup group. And drag on a new button and we'll label it pickup. Now, when this button is clicked, we want it to pop up the pickup group. So we'll go to button extra actions and click pop up pickup group. Now on the pickup group, we'll drag on two images that will represent the cone and the cube. We'll also drag on an X button so that we can X out the group. Go to button extra actions and click hide pickup group. We'll also drag on buttons on top of the cone and cube. We'll go into button extra actions and click hide pickup group. We also want this group to pop up immediately when teleop group appears, so we'll shift click this onto the group. As you can see, pickup group is a subsidiary of teleop group. And then we'll fix the group by moving this up. Once this is done, we'll create a scoring and supercharged group that will track regular scoring and supercharged scoring, which is identical to the process that we use for auto. And I'll go ahead and set up one button. First, we're going to create a group that will represent our teleop scoring, and we'll name it teleop scoring. And we'll set it to hide initially. We'll also create a button for scoring. Once we have this, we'll drag on a button, and we'll take up about the same space that we took up for the last. This will be our high cone, so we'll label it high cone, and we'll go into field configuration and name it tele cone high. And then when this button is clicked, we want it to hide the group so that the user knows that they clicked it. So we'll click hide teleop scoring. And we'll repeat this process for the rest of the scoring group and the supercharged scoring group as well. After all of this is done, you can see that the pickup group works, and you can click the X and all of this will collapse. The scoring group, everything will collapse, even this. And for supercharge, everything will be scored and collected. After this, we're going to add the dock and engage radio switch. So we'll go into choices and we'll drag out the radio option. And we'll set it to no default. And we'll name this tele engage. Once that is done, we'll create a switch that will determine whether the robot parked or not. Lastly, we'll add a tip and disconnect checkbox, which will ask the user if the robot tipped or disconnected. Finally, we'll add the previous and submit buttons on the bottom here. And I'll set it to pop up the auto. The next button will actually be a submit button, which will submit the whole form. So we'll label it submit. We'll also create a submit group that will pop up when the user submits it, let it know that it's submitting. I'll also add a little bit of text that'll let the user know that it's submitting. I'll just drag it onto here, change the color, and label it submitting. And so when the user clicks submit, what will happen is they'll pop up this group and it will go back to the setup group. And on the extra actions, I'll click pop-up submit group, and I'll also click submit and reset. And I'll set this to hide initially. And just for a final check, the teleop group should be the last group. So we'll pop up teleop by clicking this, and then we'll click auto group, and then we'll click setup group. Your input form is done, and we'll head over to preview, and you can test it for yourself.
All right, so now we have an entire scouting form in just about 15 minutes. That was pretty easy. And the coolest part, I have it up on my phone right now. Isn't that crazy? Now, I'm going to go ahead and put in some fake data, then let's head back to our project to take a look at the data that I entered.
To test out the app, I'll use the app on my phone with the competition video, and I'll score a series of robots. To access the app, first travel to input.reallifedata.net and log in with the information that you made the app with. Once you do this, your input form should pop up, and click on the share button and add to home screen. Now all you have to do is visit it, log in again, and now your form is loaded on your phone. In a competition, there'll be hundreds of data points, but I'm just going to do a few and score this match just to make sure the graphs and tables have enough data.
What a match! I scouted as if I was there in the stands, and the form worked perfectly. I got all the data that I needed. Now, let's go take a look at it.
To see the data that we collected, head over to datasets on the left. And as you can see, there's already a dataset created that gathers input from the user, which we used for the last match. These datasets can be used to separate and store data for specific competitions, and the data submitted can also be edited and corrected to be sure that no silly errors get stored into the database. When you have multiple datasets, it's important to specify where the data is going when an input form is submitted. When a dataset is selected, there should be a circle with a D that signifies that the dataset is accepting input from the input form. To alter the data, click on the dataset, and there will be a series of record IDs that corresponds to the times that the input form was submitted. If we wanted to change, let's say, the team number, then all we have to do is drag on the team number field and click on it, and you can just change it to whatever you want. And click Save, and it's stored in the dataset. You can also delete certain records by clicking this trash can button. And you can also search for certain input field if you have, let's say, like hundreds of input fields under your dataset. Once we have a clear source for data to be collected, we must transfer it over into terms that we can understand. To do this, head over to Calculations and create a new Calculation tab. You can name it whatever you want, but in this case, I'll name mine Test. For this first tab, we'll create generic calculations that will be used to make team-specific calculations in a new tab. We'll begin by making a calculation for auto and teleop scores, as well as peace and engaging scores within these modes. For the engage score, we have to check if the robot engaged or docked, which can be done with the equals equals operator. To do this, create a calculation and name it auto engage score, or for short, AE score. After this, we're going to drag on the parentheses operator, then click auto engage bet inside the parentheses. Then we're going to drag out the equals equals operator, and we're going to drag out the text block. For this text block, we'll set it to the word engage because that's what's returned when the robot engages in the radio. Then we'll multiply this block by 12 because that's the amount of points that it takes to engage in auto. And this is how you calculate auto engage score, and we'll repeat this for teleop and as well as docking and leaving the community. As you can see, all of the scores are calculated for teleop and auto. What we'll do now is we'll add these up into a cumulative auto engage and tele engage score. To do this, we'll create a new score and we'll name it P engage score. And we'll add up and we'll use the sum operator. We'll add up all of the teleop calculated scores. And we will do the same for auto as well. Once this is done, we're going to be tracking the piece score. So to do that, we'll create a new calculation and we'll do a piece score, which will be our auto piece. And for this, we'll use the count operator, which will count the amount of times that a button is clicked. So we'll scroll up to our auto pieces, and we'll count auto cone high and auto cube high. And to convert this into score, we'll multiply this by 6, which is the amount of points for each one. And we'll do the same for mid and low. Once this is done for both modes, you can see that both the teleop pieces and auto pieces are scored. So we'll make an auto total and teleop score total. To do this, we'll create a new calculation. We'll name it auto score. And we'll just sum up the two calculated fields. It'll be auto engage and auto piece score. And we'll do the same for teleop. Once this is done, we'll sum up the cones and cubes scored by a robot. To do this, we'll create a new calculation, name it cones scored, or C scored. And for this one, we'll add up every single instance of cones scored in a match, which will be every single cone field here. So we'll use the sum operator, and every single thing that is considered a cone will be added on. We'll also be tracking the cube scored, which will be the same exact process. Once we have all of these calculations down, we're going to do a few more calculations, such as how many pieces are scored in auto and teleop, which we'll do using the count operator again. And we'll also do the ranges at which the robot scores. After this, we'll check whether or not the robot leaves the community, docks, engages, or fails to engage. For this, we'll use the equals equals operator to check true or false, which simply checks whether or not the robot has done a certain action. And we'll just use tele-engage equals equals, and we'll drag on the text block. And we'll do the same for tele-doc. And we're also doing this for the community too. So we'll do auto community true, and we'll drag out the auto community field, and we'll set it equal to yes, because that's what the option was when we made the switch. Also do telepark true. And we do these calculations because they'll be useful for team-specific calculations, which we'll tackle a bit later. But finally, we'll check whether or not the robot has tipped or disconnected. So to do this, we'll create a new calculation, name it tip DC. And we'll use the contains any function, which is under statistics. And we'll drag on our tip DC field. And we'll also drag on text that will say tip. So this will just check if the robot tipped using the contains any and then the tip function. So we'll do this for DC as well. After this, we'll create a new tab for the team-specific calculations. So we'll just name it team. To create this tab, we'll click on the plus sign, name the field team. Once inside, we'll select the team number input fields, which will be down here. And we'll drag it into the group by section, which will group all the calculations by team number. This will ensure that the calculations are collected on the basis of a certain team. So let's say I wanted to calculate the tip percentage for team 2468, it would group this calculation by 2468. For these, we're going to mainly deal with averages and percents. To create an average, what we can do is we can create a new calculation. Let's say we'll do average point scored or average auto point scored. We'll drag on an average function from statistics, auto score. We'll do this for the rest of the calculations here. We'll do it for teleop score, auto score, high pieces, low pieces, mid pieces, as well as the tele-engage score. And then we'll also deal with percentages. So let's say I want to calculate the tele percentage. or engage percentage for Telly. So what I do is I drag on the percent sign, I drag on the Telly engage true, and I'll drag on a number here, and this will be 1. And what this 1 will do is that'll make it in terms of a percentage so that it's easier to view. And just to finish off the percentage section, if you wanted to make it look like an actual percent, just drag on the multiplies and drag on 100. And this will change it from like 0.6 to 60%.
Awesome. We're all done with our calculations, and these will run automatically on your data. Now, let's go make some graphs and tables to help show off the calculations that we just made.
To see our calculations and data come to life, let's head over to the graph section, where we'll create graphs based on the calculations made. To create a graph, head over to the graph section on the sidebar and click Add Graph. We'll be focusing on 8 main graphs. The first 3 will be line graphs, which will cover auto score, auto pieces, and teleop score. And the next 5 will be bar graphs, cones, cubes, split, docking points per match, the ability to dock, win percentages, high, mid, and low level scoring, and the total score, tele score, auto score split. So we're going to name our first graph auto score, which will be a line graph. And to specify this, there'll be a pop-up and we'll select the line graph. On our x-axis, we'll put in the team number, and on our y-axis, we'll put the auto score, which we labeled A score. And for our lines and constraints, we'll go back up to team number and put it as a line and as a constraint. Now, something special that we want to do is we click on this gear icon and constraints, and we change this to user selection, which will help us later in the dashboard section. We'll also go over to test data, and we'll change this to default so that it uses the data that we have. We can also go into line styles. You could change it to dashed, different types of stuff. You can also go to legend, and this will label everything. You'll put it on the top for now. We'll repeat that for the other graphs. For bar graphs, the process is a bit different, but the creation will be the same. We'll go to add graph and we'll click bar graph. We'll first name it cones, cube, split, because that's the first bar graph that we're going to do. We'll click on simple bar graph. And for our x-axis, you can just drag on match number. Y-axis will be cube scored and cone scored. You'll change your test data to default. And you'll drag on team number as a constraint. You'll go to the gear, change this to user selection. And you can also modify the aesthetics of this graph by heading into column styles and just changing this to whatever color that you please. You can also add a legend, which we did last time. And you can repeat this process for the rest of the graphs. Once this is done, we'll make 4 tables, which will represent docking ability, teleop, auto, and an overall table. To create a table, click on the new table on the left side and just click add table. And we're going to name it auto table because that's going to be the first table that we're going to create. Once this table is created, we're going to drag on the team number, and we're also going to drag on any auto related fields that we need. This is going to be your auto community percentage, your auto dock percentage, auto engage percent, your average auto score, average auto pieces, auto fail percent, and auto no attempt percent, which comes from your 4 selectors in the radio on your auto page. You're going to change this test data to default. And to modify the aesthetics of this table, we can go over to the right side and go to borders. You can change all of these colors. And once we have this, we'll repeat for the rest of the tables. After creating all these graphs and tables, we will have one main dashboard which will represent all of the graphs that we have made. To create a dashboard, select Dashboards on the left, then click on Add Dashboard. And we'll name it Team Dashboard. And we'll have 4 tabs. It'll be similar to the table that we created. So we'll do Auto tab, and we'll also do a Teleop tab, a Docking tab, and an Overall tab. Now, it's always good practice to keep yourself minimized when you're doing this dashboard because it makes it a lot easier to work with. So the first thing that we're going to do is drag over a user constraint in the constraints and filters box, and we're going to constrain it by team number. We're going to click OK. So now this selector right here, whenever we go into the dashboard, it will constrain our tables and graphs by a team number. And then since this is the overall section, we'll drag on our overall graphs, which will be our total tele auto, and we'll delete this that comes with it. Then we'll drag on the high, mid, low, and also delete the constraint that comes with it. Next, we'll drag on the table, which will be our master table. And we'll also click each of these graphs with this team selector selected. We'll click each of these graphs so that whenever a number is selected here, it will select it on the graphs and tables. And we will repeat this for the other tabs on the dashboard. Once you finish this dashboard, congratulations, your scouting system is complete. Once everything is completed, to view the graphs, tables, and dashboards, head over to view.reallifedata.net. Now, if you are shared to the project that someone has created, it will appear here. Or if you're the person that has created it, you'll see it in My Project. Here, all of the tables and dashboards and graphs that you've created will pop up here. And you can see our team dashboard that we created earlier. Now, if you select the team, all of their stats will appear in auto, teleop, in docking, and in the overall. Now, if you want to look at an individual graph, you can go back, head over to My Projects, and you can just click on any one of these graphs that you created. You can click on Total Tele Auto, and we can just select a team number, and all of their stats will show up.
Wow, we just made an entire scouting system with real life data in only 30 minutes. I hope you liked this video and go sign up on our website to make your scouting app next season. If you have any questions, comment down below and we look forward to seeing what you guys can make with real life data.